What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so shout out to the brother Daryl Sloan for letting me see this argument that this guy had as to why he thinks that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is a fraud. All right, it was on the player's choice. He thinks that Kareem is definitely not top two. He's not better than Michael Jordan or better than LeBron James. And he gave a multitude of reasons behind it. I think he finds his game pedantic, soporific, which I know I'm using some big words there, but basically plain and ordinary, boring, okay? You often hear that with today's generation because they're more inclined to play from the perimeter, ball handling, ball wizardry, shooting from outside. That's to them skills. All right. He talked about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's help, the guys he's played with over the years. That how could you not win playing with guys like Oscar and Magic? He talked about, certain advantages Kareem had, his height, size, I think. He talked about the fact that there was a stretch, obviously, when the ABA was in place, that there was talent not even in the NBA, so it was a watered-down NBA. He talked about, what else did he say? Oh, Kareem, because of that lack of competition, that's why he won so many MVPs. And, in the 80s, actually, he made a mistake. He said that Kareem won all of his MVPs in the 80s, which was a lie. He must have meant the 1970s. But I guess generally speaking, he's trying to say, Kareem couldn't win without the help of Magic or Oscar, right? So he brought up different centers and said how they were better than Kareem. He brought up Shaq. Hakeem said that they are both arguably better than Kareem. And at the end of the day, I got to say this. Number one, you penalize Kareem Abdul-Jabbar because before 1982-ish, around that time, the players voted for the league MVP, as opposed to the media. All right? And we saw a change after that. One of the trends that we saw when it became the media rather than the players is that it often was the best guy on the winningest team. Whereas before that, it was the guy that was considered the consensus best player. That's why before the media started taking over as far as voting for MVPs, your leaders, as far as multiple MVPs, were your all-time greats. It was Kareem, Russell, Chamberlain. And on top of my head, that's about it as far as multiple-time MVPs. So, to me, when the media took over, it became more narrative-driven. But then he said Shaq was more dominant, right? Shaq was dominant. Kareem wouldn't be able to handle Shaq, whatever. Now, while it is true that Kareem did struggle defensively against physical players, at the same time, Shaq struggles against guys who have leverage over him and can shoot over him. Remember, Shaq had problems with an old-ass Arvydas Sabonis. Shaq had problems with Big Country Reeves. Shaq had issues with Yao Ming. So it stands to reason that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar would give him the fucking business with the skyhook. he would give him the fucking business. Also, for all of Shaq's supposed dominance, Shaq had career averages of 8 points, and I think something like 10.8 rebounds. Whereas Kareem, who played 20 years, averaged 24.6 points and 11.2 rebounds. As a matter of fact, when you go prime for prime, Kareem's numbers are better than Shaq's. Prime for prime, Shaq was averaging around 26 and 11 and a half rebounds, whereas Kareem, prime for prime, was averaging 28 points and 14 rebounds per game. Shaq won 2 scoring titles, while Kareem won 2 scoring titles. Shaq never led the league in blocks. Kareem did. And that's including the fact that the first 4 years of his career, they didn't even count his blocks. You take the first 4 years away from Kareem, he probably was averaging at least 4.5 to 5 blocks per game those years. Even when you take those years away, he still gets over 3,000 career blocks. I don't think Shaq had over 3,000 career blocks. I think he was at 2,800 or something like that. But he never led the league in blocks. He never led the league in rebounds. The closest he did was his rookie year when he averaged 13.9, whereas Dennis Rodman averaged, I think that year, something like 18.3. You know what I'm saying? Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who was often criticized for his lack of rebounding ability, especially offensive rebounding, still led the league in rebounds one year. Now, you talk about how Kareem went back-to-back years without going to the playoffs. But one of those years, Kareem had arguably the worst roster for a Lakers team in the past 50-plus years. Even worse than the year Kobe averaged 35 points a game. He didn't have any player on that team of the caliber of Andrew Bynum or Lamar Odom. One of those years he won MVP. I think the team went 40-42. And if you look at that year, even though they only won 40 games, Kareem led the league in win shares with like 17, 18, 19 credited victories. So it's strongly suggested if you take Kareem off that team, they go from winning 40 games to maybe 20. That was an awful team. Kareem was the only reason why they kind of was in the battle for a playoff spot. And also, look, when you have a center like Kareem, you can't have a player like Adrian Dantley on the roster. The spacing's not going to work. Kareem is a post player. Adrian Dantley likes to post up a lot. How's that going to work? So you got to look at those rosters too. Yeah, he had some good players on the team, but they weren't good fits for the team. They weren't good fits for the organization. And once they had teams around them, like I believe AD in Utah, and I think, I might be wrong, but I think one of those years, Alex English was with the Lakers. Wasn't a good fit for that team. Good fit for the Denver Nuggets. Now, people talk about the talent level that Kareem had. Now, yes, the Lakers were a great, great team. But they weren't a super team for the era. A super team for that era would be the 83 Sixers, who had Moses Malone, who had Julius Erving, who had Andrew Toney, who would have been a Hall of Famer had he not got hurt. They had Bobby Jones, and they had Maurice Cheeks. Now that's a super team. Everybody I named either is a Hall of Famer or would have been a Hall of Famer had they not had foot problems. That's a super team. The Lakers were a really, really good team, but the NBA talent level in the 80s was just so much superior. Every team, if you look at every team, just go to 1984. Just go to 1984, 85, and just look at these teams and look at the talent level on each team compared to today. Every team had at least one star, bona fide star. Most teams had at least two all-stars. A lot of teams had three all-stars. That's rare. We call that a super team today. That was a really good team back then. A super team was what the 83 Sixers were. The talent level was just much deeper. You only had 23 teams, but you had a lot more deeper talent back then as opposed to today. Now, he criticizes Kareem for playing in a league that didn't have all the talent, some of the talent in the ABA. That's a fair point. But LeBron Dick Licks don't like when you say, well, 3 of LeBron James' 4 championships came during the weakest era in the Eastern Conference in NBA history. From the breakup of that Boston Celtics team, the Big Three, until the aftermath of the trade, where those trades and other pieces started coming together and that Boston team started rising, which is exactly when LeBron James left to go to the Western Conference. During that time period, what competition was there for LeBron James in the Eastern Conference? DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry, Paul George and Hibbert? I mean, seriously. That was his competition? And you're on this Heat team that's a super team in comparison to other teams? And then you wonder how you went to so many finals in a row and you still have a losing record in the finals. And if you look at LeBron James' teammates in the past 10 years, nobody, and I mean nobody in the NBA comes close to having as many all-star level teammates as LeBron James has had, hell, in the past 15 years. Nobody comes close. Nobody comes close. And if the Lakers have their way, they'll give him more help this year. And the man still has a losing record in the finals. So, that's bullshit. I also want to point out one other thing before I go. If I haven't done this already. Hype. What is this person talking about? Media hype. Since when has Kareem been hyped? You got Skip Bayless and ESPN with a list that has Michael Jordan as the greatest college player of all time. When the consensus greatest college player up until they decided to change it was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. When I was growing up, the GOAT argument was Wilt versus Jordan. And it became Jordan versus Shaq for a little bit. Jordan versus Kobe. Now it's Jordan versus LeBron. Kareem has not really seriously been in the conversation for GOAT for a very, very long time. But it's funny, the same reasons that people are going to all of a sudden automatically crown LeBron the GOAT by becoming the all-time leading scorer was never a good enough reason for Kareem to be the GOAT. It was never a good enough reason. But anyway, that's all I got to say about it, man. Let me just get this out the way, man. People keep saying it's amazing that LeBron is about to pass Kareem. How is that the case? When this man has been able to play 20 years nonstop without any type of yielding or any type of sacrifice to his game. He gets to go out there and take 20 to 22, 23 shots a game for his entire career. at age 37, when most players are expected to at least start, being a little bit more, to shrink their role. He expanded his role. But you know what? That's a whole nother video. Anyway, let's tell me what you guys think.